Now, this story is about two men, one city, and the fate of the global economy hanging in balance. Now, on May 13th, US President Donald Trump lands in Beijing for a face-to-face with his Chinese counterpart Xi Jinping. Trump's first China visit of his second term in White House. But behind the silken ceremony, this is one of the most consequential global diplomatic meetings in years. And if you're watching from India, pay very close attention. Let's start first with the agenda. Well, Trump arrives in Beijing on Wednesday evening. Thursday opens with a formal bilateral followed by a visit to the Temple of Heaven, steeped in symbolism. Then a lavish state banquet. Friday, it's a working lunch before the US president finally flies back home. Well, the White House is calling it tremendously symbolic, but they're also making clear that Trump doesn't travel for photo ops alone. So what's actually being negotiated here? Well, first up, of course, is trade. Now, this is the headline issue. Trump's tariffs have been the big stick in the room. A year-long trade truce agreed last October is set to expire, and both sides are talking about extending it. But here's the catch. American officials are being deliberately vague. One senior official put it plainly, and I quote him, "What both sides want is stability," unquote. Now, that word, stability, tells you pretty much everything you need to know. Nobody's claiming victory. Nobody's ready for a full deal. They just don't want the situation to explode. Next up is, of course, Iran on agenda. This is the real curveball. Trump is still fighting a war with Iran, one of US and Israel, launched in February this year. Now, China is Tehran's economic lifeline, buying its oil and selling its dual-use military goods. Now, Trump has already sanctioned 5 Chinese refineries for processing Iranian crude. Now, Beijing responded by ordering its companies to ignore these sanctions. Now, expect a tense conversation here. And third, of course, is Taiwan, artificial intelligence, and the entire world of critical minerals. Now, these are the slow-burning fuses. Taiwan always comes up between these two leaders and in the race for semiconductor dominance and rare earth control. And you've got a rivalry that goes far deeper than mere tariffs. But here's the thing, both China and America need this meeting, but neither wants to look like they actually need it. Now, Trump needs a win he can sell at home. Trade deals, manufacturing promises, maybe a dramatic announcement as well. Now, his base wants to see China on the back foot. The Chinese president needs relief. China's economy has been under pressure. Tariff uncertainty is killing business confidence. A stable trade relationship with the US is worth a lot, even if it means smiling through a lecture about Iran. So, what you'll likely see is exactly this: theoretical friction followed by a mannish handshake, maybe an extension of the trade truce. Now, carefully worded statements on Taiwan that commit pretty much to nothing. It's not peace. It's not war. It's the two biggest powers on earth deciding for now that the cost of escalation is too high. But this managed tension between US and China can turn out to matter enormously for India. Now, India doesn't have a seat at this table, but India has arguably more riding on this outcome than almost any other country. For nearly a decade, India has quietly benefited from something it never asked for: the US-China rivalry. Now, think about it. When Washington and Beijing are at each other's throats, both look at New Delhi. The Quad gets momentum, tech partnerships deepen, capital flows in. India gets to play the indispensable swing partner, close enough to America to matter and independent enough to keep China guessing. That's right. Now, that playbook, unfortunately, only works if the US and China are competing and not cooperating, but also not at open war. India needs the rivalry to stay alive, managed, and just uncomfortable enough that both giants keep looking over their shoulder at New Delhi. Now, zoom in. What's happening right now? Just this week, on the first anniversary of Operation Sindoor, Chinese state television broadcast something very unusual. Engineers from China's premier aircraft design and research institute described their on-the-ground operational role in Pakistan during last year's conflict. Beijing is no longer pretending to be indifferent, but rather accepting that it arms Pakistan. At the same time, America, India's indispensable technology and capital partner, had imposed 50% tariffs on Indian goods, twice deferred the Quad summit and rehabilitated Pakistan's army chief in a way not seen since the Musharraf era. Now, if Trump and Xi Jinping walk out of Beijing with a sweeping deal, a structural reset of their relationship, the strategic premium both place on India collapses. Now, New Delhi becomes a smaller piece in a more settled game. If they walk out in open confrontation, sanctions flying, markets panicking, India faces brutal choices on energy, banking and trade simultaneously. The sweet spot really for India can be a managed rivalry, friction without fracture, competition without catastrophe. So, let's not confuse the upcoming meeting between Donald Trump and Xi Jinping as yet another trade summit. It's two of the world's biggest economies recalibrating, deciding how much rivalry they can afford, how much cooperation they need, and what price everyone else has to pay for their choices. Now, the world is looking at Beijing, some more nervously than others.